Jujutsu Kaisen. Big, popular, raw. Among all of the factors that go into this immensely popular series right now, one of the things that has always interested me is how weirdly complicated a lot of this information is, while still being actually not that difficult to understand if someone explains it to you well. One good example of this is the power system, which has a lot of moving parts that cross-reference each other, but is actually not that big of a deal to understand if you have a top-down view. And well, I already did a video on it, but that one was very vague and sort of limited in scope. So, today I feel the itch to give you a rundown of how the cursed energy system actually works. We will do that in two parts. This is part 1, where I will draw you a small, simple, but comprehensive infographic on how the curse system actually functions within Jujutsu Kaisen. We will try to keep things relatively easy and just have most of the important terms connected to each other. This is the easy part though, because in the second part, I am going to drink a whole lot of water and then explain every single ability in Jujutsu Kaisen, trying to fit it into this tree that we will draw and trying to give you an idea of how these powers actually function. Just a quick note about spoilers, this first part will be completely spoiler free, unless you consider finding out about types of abilities a spoiler, but I don't think it is. So, with that out of the way, welcome to the first part of the Jujutsu Kaisen Power Guide. Let's just immediately get started. Our starting point is, like it is with many things, humans, or more specifically, living conscious beings. These beings, as you may be aware, can have negative emotions, and those emotions produce something that is called cursed energy. This is a negative energy that is destructive and is produced by anything that can have negative thoughts and emotions. It is this energy that is at the center of the power system. Now, cursed energy does a lot of things. For example, if it accumulates by itself within an environment, what can happen is that it can create other semi-conscious beings called cursed spirits. These ethereal beings are completely made out of cursed energy and are generally hostile to humans. This is what most of the villains in Jujutsu Kaisen are made of. However, that is not the main thing cursed energy is used for in the series, because of course this is a shonen action series, and so we need to get this energy into some action. Now, the first thing you can do with cursed energy is to just hurl it at your enemy. These are considered non-techniques because they're generally really crude and volatile, because they rely on just using cursed energy as it is. This may include spitting it out like a beam, or infusing your physical attacks with it. Either way, while these can be powerful, they are usually hard to control and are considered unrefined, and that is why most sorcerers will try to avoid using that. Next, we have the cursed technique. This is where about 80% of all powers in the series fall into. A cursed technique is a unique, specific ability a character is given at birth. This can be a random ability that they just developed when they were born, or it can be an ability that has been passed down through the generations within their family. And these come in all shapes and sizes and can do various things, and you will see in part 2 that there really is no limit to what can be a cursed technique. But the key point here is that they are not learnable. You're either born with one or you're not. And here on the far end, we have what I call learnable techniques. This is not an official term, but this is what I've come to calling them. These are abilities that are generally quite weak, but can actually be learned by pretty much anyone who has at least slight mastery of their cursed energy flow. A lot of these are focused on countering cursed techniques, as in a lot of them produce some sort of immediate quick effect to get you out of a pinch. And then a lot of them use an object like a sword as a medium, and there is an entire sword-related school of abilities that is dedicated under this point. And that's really the biggest basics. This is the bare-bones skeleton of the Jujutsu Kaisen power system. However, I want to go into a little bit more detail, so bear with me. If we go back up the tree, back up to the cursed energy point, then you may have noticed that I called cursed energy a negative energy. And that is because that's what it is. It is produced from negative emotions, and because of that, it is inherently destructive, which is good if you want to fight people. However, cursed energy cannot be used for healing, at least not on humans. It can heal cursed spirits because they're literally made out of that stuff, so to them it doesn't make a difference. But to a human, cursed energy is only destructive and cannot heal their wounds. But what if you want to be a healer? Well, there is a workaround. Cursed energy you can imagine as having a minus in front of it, like a minus number in maths. And if you remember middle school maths, if you multiply a negative number with a negative number, you receive a positive number. And cursed energy works the same. If you multiply cursed energy with itself through a process that is pretty much gibberish on Akutami's part, so I will not cover it, you can turn cursed energy into reverse cursed energy, which is positive energy that can heal human bodies. However, this is incredibly difficult and only very few sorcerers are capable of doing it. Now, if you've been paying attention, you could of course pose the question, what if I use the reverse cursed energy to use my cursed technique? Because it's still cursed energy, so you should be able to use it in your general abilities. And you can, and it produces a reverse cursed technique. This is basically your usual unique ability, but inverted. For example, let's say generally your cursed technique attracts things. Well, if you use your cursed technique with reverse cursed energy and turn it into a reverse cursed technique, instead of attracting things, you will repel them. Simple as that. This is, however, again, a supremely rare ability. You're still with me? Good. Just a few more to go. Now, let's go back down the tree, down to non-techniques, because there is actually a little thing here that we might want to add. While some of the things that are included under this rider are just things that you can do that are not considered techniques, there are also a few properties of using cursed energy that fall into this category. Cursed energy is, after all, a volatile type of energy that can do some pretty crazy shit when you don't want it to. For example, if you are doing literally anything with cursed energy, you are usually trying to match your physical movements to the flow of your cursed energy. This is incredibly difficult to do because you need to have a very astute feeling for your own flow of cursed energy. So usually there's always a little bit of lag. However, if you do manage to hit that time window wherein you are in sync with your cursed energy, that cursed energy will flash black and produce the Black Flash. This is what you could consider a critical hit. It does massive amounts of damage, much more than your usual attacks, and cannot be done consciously. It will only happen when a sorcerer is perfectly in tune with their own cursed energy flow. Hitting a Black Flash for the first time is considered a milestone because doing so will give you a more innate understanding of how your own energy flows and works. However, again, you cannot do this consciously, and there is no one in the series that can force themselves to produce a Black Flash. If we now turn our attention to the star of the show, the cursed technique, we can add two extra things. Generally, cursed techniques are unique abilities that you just have and that you can refine over time, to the point where you can even manipulate it into becoming so strong that some people even call it an extension technique. This is not listed here, but just keep in mind that you can power up your ability by training it. However, there are two pinnacles of cursed technique usage that are found within Jujutsu Society. Two types of abilities that are so powerful that they are considered a sign of pure mastery of the craft. One of them is domain expansion. This is considered the peak of Jujutsu finesse, and you can think of it as a pocket dimension that you pull your enemy into. Within that pocket dimension, you and your ability are king. You will never miss an attack, and you will always be able to activate your ability within it. You can think of it as a pocket space that is completely made up of your ability. As you can probably tell, the actual properties of such a domain will always be very different depending on which sorcerer is actually using it. but the properties will always be unique and supremely powerful, especially because a domain expansion can only be countered and escaped from either by using your own domain expansion or by using specific techniques to counter it, which you have to learn through grueling training. The second pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery are the maximum techniques. These are considered the counterpart to domain expansions and are the peak of Jujutsu power. They are, in the most basic terms, your usual curse technique used at a maximum output, to the point where they essentially transform themselves into giant nukes. There is little known about these because they've only cropped up a handful of times, but every time they have, they are supremely powerful, essentially the raw power equivalent of a domain expansion. And with that, we have pretty much finished the main tree. I will just add a tiny thing, just one, just bear with me here for a second. Sorcerers can also do something that is called a binding vow. It's a bit abstract, but basically a binding vow is a promise you make to yourself or someone else. Usually that comes with a disadvantage and an advantage for both parties. The reason this is important is because Jujutsu works on a basis of giving and taking, of advantage and disadvantage. And so, if you force a disadvantage on yourself, you can gain another advantage at a later point. This is just how cursed energy functions within humans. The most common example within the series is called showing your hand, which in simplest terms is just when a sorcerer explains their ability to the enemy. By revealing how their ability functions, they are putting themselves at a disadvantage, and so in turn they receive an advantage, namely that their own technique gets stronger as long as they continue explaining it to the enemy. We are almost done. One last thing that I want to add to this, a binding vow also includes something called a heavenly restriction. This is a very mysterious phenomenon in the Jujutsu world, wherein a binding vow is forced onto a child at birth, not by someone, but just by fate. These children then usually suffer extreme effects, as the disadvantages they're given are usually pretty heavy. However, that also means that the advantages they gain are that much stronger. The most common way this manifests itself is that a child is born with lessened or no cursed energy to speak of, being therefore completely unable to do Jujutsu sorcery. However, in return, they're given a superhumanly strong body, to the point where they can actually keep up with sorcerers through sheer raw power. And there you go, this is our complete tree of Jujutsu Kaisen's power system. And when I say complete, I mean very much not complete. It is definitely missing a few things, but most of them are details that you can learn just by rereading the relevant sections. For what it's worth, I think this tree will give you a good understanding of everything you need to know to just enjoy the series. And if you want more details, just tune into the next episode of the Jujutsu Kaisen Power Guide, where I will literally die on screen trying to explain every single ability of every single named character. You won't want to miss it. Thank you everyone for watching. As always, it's a great pleasure to make these videos for you, and also as always, a great thank you to all of our patrons who should be on screen right now. A special thank you to Daniel Garcia, Fiction Ape, Cini, Victor Perez, Cesar Londono, Gio, Jameson Tate, Pero Scocco, Mr. Meander, and Paracha. See you all next time. Be safe, be healthy, wash your hands. Bye bye.